Okay, last chapter of the week. Keep those questions and comments running. I love these little stories. Application support. Most applications are written to interact with certain subsystems like 32-bit, 64-bit, Windows, Linux, Mac. There are application environments that you can do to restrict what a program can do. And any poorly written application can create quite a headache for you, and you can use the application environments to save you from that headache, like virtualization. Any applications that are built for a 32-bit system are technically not supposed to run on a 64-bit system because they're not built to handle that architecture. Windows, of course, has built a way around that, and they were so brilliant to call it Windows on Windows 64 or WoW 64. Essentially what it does, it turns those 32-bit API calls into their equivalent 64-bit version to run. So in a way, it's kind of like a layered virtualization. And 16-bit is not supposed to run on a 64-bit unless you use something like a hypervisor to get around that. The .NET framework is something you have seen, I'm sure you have, in like updates and vulnerabilities. This has been around, and a lot of people don't know what it is. It's just, all right, something more to add. But it is a commonly used application environment for Windows. There are a lot of versions of .NET. So you might on your machine have various versions installed of .NET. Pretty annoying. The Windows Store. I don't know about you, but I do not use the Windows Store, well, especially because I'm not on a Windows machine. You can install some stuff through there. You can run old systems, old software. But yeah, in 64-bit, you should not be able to run DOS or anything 16-bit. What you will need to do is use another program to run it in a virtual instance. Like NTVDM can run a DOS application. The registry. Oh my gosh, the registry. For the longest time, the registry was the underbelly of Windows. That should somebody add a key that doesn't belong or rewrite a essential key in just a character off, all of Windows just collapses like a house of cards. In most cases, you will never need to touch the registry. You should know how the structure of it, and know that it is still very fragile to Windows. The Microsoft folks thought it was brilliant to take this essential database structure and put all the configurations into it. So registry has sections, and each section has layers of data. Those sections are called hives, kind of like a beehive. Within every hive, you have keys and values. Again, if you misconfigure a registry key, it can lead to Windows crashing. It's pretty funny. It's also pretty dumb. For example, you have the main The main hives, classes root, current user, local machine, users, and current config. HKey classes root has all the extensions. So if you want to be evil and make a text file, try to open in like a browser, well, you would go into classes root and change what program opens a TXT file. I will let your imagination handle the rest in the realm of the evil department. Current user only loads when a user is logged in. HKey local machine has all the settings for all the hardware and all software that is installed. That is all in here. HKey users has all the users that exist in the system. Current config is the current configuration of the local machine. So 2 of these hives are current in the sense of the machine is on and what users logged in. The other 3 are pretty standard. Basically everything I just explained. Local machine, like I said, it is the biggest of the hives. Well, second biggest to classes root. Because if you have a lot of extensions, not of known extensions, then you're going to have a very large hive in there. Otherwise, this is where you have the hardware, the software, and system stuff. You should always, when walking into the registry, you should always do a backup of the portion you're going to change. Because if things go south and Windows crashes, you can log in safe mode, correct the registry, and then you're back up running normally. Like I said, it is possible to completely cripple Windows from the registry. Regedit has been the way that we can change things since the dawn of time, along with reg.exe being the command line twin. That's what it looks like. Hasn't really changed much. You can edit the registry through PowerShell. It has the capability to do so, but still carries the same underbelly. For a program that is 32 or .NET, you can install it as an MSI, difference from EXE. Those are read by the Windows Installer Service, which is different from an executable. You can automate an installer. You can add it to a sign-in script or add it to group policy to install. Here's the options that you can add for running an installer. Like I said, any MSI-based applications you can add into group policy and send them out. So you can install a program to a bunch of computers through the group policy as long as you have an MSI file. I will say that is neat because I don't necessarily, if I have a room of 30 machines or if I have a company of 60, I don't want to touch all 60 devices, but if I can do it through group policy, sweet. Makes life much easier. You can use Windows Store to install apps. If you have the appx file, you can sideload them into Windows. So here, instead of having the actual MSI file, you would just say, hey, install these, and it would use Windows Store to do it. After sideloading, it can install the packet through like something like in PowerShell with the add appx packet, or use Microsoft Store for Business, either way. You can run Office 365 in Windows, surprise, surprise. You can do package management. It's not the most useful thing because it's somewhat limited. It's gotten better, but I wouldn't use it. Of course, not every application will work in Windows, even if it's built to run. Older apps may run, may not, and you can use the app compatibility in order to run an old application, like running, you know, in an older version like 7 or Vista, or saying, hey, we're going to run in a reduced color mode. Basically creates a mini VM, if you will, to run that application. The toolkit, I haven't had much success with the compatibility toolkit. I've had more failure than success, but it is an option. But its main goal is supposed to be here. Let me run this program. Let me see where it works best and set those configurations so that it does. It is possible to migrate if you're using other tools like the standard user analyzer. Next on the item list is HyperV. Oh, would you equate those compatibility more similar to Docker? Yes. Yes, I would compare those more or less to Docker. Although it would be more of a stripped down Docker. Hyper-V is another option where you can run a old OS and its application that you need to run within a VM. For the most part, you will see Hyper-V in businesses because VMware is more expensive. So I would suggest becoming familiar with I would become familiar with using Hyper-V because you might see that more often than not than VMware in especially like a small business. It has gotten better to use Hyper-V. You can also use a virtual desktop to connect to another system. But I will say, please, please, please never use RDP. RDP is vulnerable. It is exploitable. Do your best to avoid using RDP at all costs. If you have to use RDP, use it through a VPN or some other means, but do not use RDP to connect out to a machine on the internet. Please do not. AppV is application virtualization. It'll basically run the application within a virtual machine, but you see only the application. This is more Docker-like. There is the remote desktop services that you can install in Windows Server in order to allow users to connect to it remotely. Again, do not, for heaven's sake, do not run RDP on any internet-facing systems. Please do not. Save yourself the embarrassment and the pain of getting breached. Use other methods, other more secure methods. You could use Remote App. Comes with Azure. So if you're using Azure, you'll be dealing with Remote App. Something like this will be a little more secure using Remote Desktop Web Access, because you could secure the HTTPS connection better than you can in RDP. So again, you can configure that through the URL, through group policy, or based on email address, according to however you set up. And this is kind of the little prompt that you would get when you set up a remote app to desktops. Any questions? This was fun. You guys had some good questions today. Okay, looks like we don't have any questions. So as always, we have a lecture review, more NetLab stuff, and a quiz. And if you're stuck on anything, ask away in the Discord channels. So that's where we are, and we can help each other.